Sitting here with Raymond Ray Powell. We have a great relationship through our SkyFi network with Ray. And yeah, Ray, can you just introduce yourself to our audience a little bit?
Yeah, my name's Ray. I run a project out of Stanford University. We call it Sealight, and the object of this project is to illuminate things that happen at sea that the perpetrators of some particular bad activities don't want you to know about, and they sort of hide them by simply being at sea and doing things in kind of a surreptitious way. So we try to make sure that if they are doing those things, that they have to pay the cost for them.
Great. And I know we met through SkyFi and our essentially correspondence there, taking a look at the South China Sea. You recently reached out to me about the Sabina Shoal, where the People's Republic of China may be. I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit about what's going on there.
So Sabina Shoal is within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, and the exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, is that area which under international law is granted to the Philippines for resource exploitation. So basically any sort of oil and gas, minerals, or fish that are in a country's exclusive economic zone belong primarily to that country. And if somebody else wants to go in and exploit them, they have to ask permission from that country. So we see, and Sabina Shoal is one of many reefs and shoals that are in the Philippines exclusive economic zone within what we call the West Philippine Sea, that has attracted the interest of the People's Republic of China, which some people may know has drawn a big U-shaped 9-dash line throughout almost the entire South China Sea, claiming that it actually owns all of that water, or at least has jurisdiction over it.
Great. And so can you explain a little bit about what might have led to what's going on right now with the People's Republic of China coming into this area, and what's kind of led up to this to create this tension?
So the number of ships that China sends down into the 9-dash line, and specifically into the Philippines EEZ, has been increasing steadily through the years. And part of the reason for that is simply that they actually just have more ships. China has been building a lot of ships, and a lot of these are what we call the Maritime Militia. These are identified formally on the ship's broadcast, and even on the side of the ship, the ship's markings. And even just looking at the ship looks like a fishing ship. And so they're all called fishing ships, but many of these ships rarely, if ever, fish. And of course, if they did go down to the exclusive economic zone of another country and fish, which some of them do, that would be illegal under international law. Under China's domestic law, under which it claims the entire 9-dash line, of course, that's not illegal. But the entire point of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, which China signed, is that you don't get to just do that. You can't just claim some huge body of water just because you say it, historically it's ours. So China sends these maritime militia boats, and sometimes they are part of sort of the professional militia, and they actually get out there and they actively push other boats around. But the other kind of militia, they often will just sort of tie themselves together and just kind of sit there. And that seems to be what we're starting to see happen again at Sabina Shoal, is with this activity that we call rafting, where they just sort of tie themselves together and sit there, and they kind of make up a floating outpost, just reminding everybody that China owns this water.
Got it. So these are not military boats per se, but really potentially civilians that are, funded more or less by China to go and sit there and claim that territory.
That's exactly right. So this is part of what we call civil military fusion. So you have certain number of civilian boats, in this case, who take orders or take instructions from the People's Liberation Army. And in this case, the instructions are simply go down here to this particular area and exist there, and they get a subsidy from the Chinese government because they are a private, they belong to a private company, but they get subsidized from the Chinese government to simply go and exist in the Spratly Archipelago at whatever place the PLA needs them.
Got it. Okay, thanks. That's very interesting. So, we met through satellite imagery as a resource to kind of watch this and monitor this over time. We've been using, as you've shown me, you use planet satellite imagery with PlanetScope with the daily images, and then we also look at some high resolution taskings every now and then in different locations. How else outside of satellite imagery are you monitoring this activity and kind of what's going on at such a remote part of the world?
Yeah, so these are smaller ships, so they don't use what we would call Class A automatic information system. And the automatic information system, or AIS, is just that ship that system, that broadcast that all civilian ships of any large size are supposed to use for safety. But most of these are slightly smaller ships, so that they may be using Class B, which is harder to pick up from a long way away. And of course, we're relying a lot on satellites. Class B doesn't tend to be very visible on satellites. So oftentimes we won't see these until one of the satellites is able to pass directly overhead and take a picture, like the ones that you're seeing. So, and the other thing to remember about Sabina Shoal is it is pretty close to the Philippines coastline. And on the other side, further out to sea, is that famous rusty ship, the VRP Sierra Madre at Second Thomas Shoal, that the Philippines has to resupply every month. So every month they'll send a ship, usually a Coast Guard ship or two, with a couple of resupply boats out to Second Thomas Shoal, and they will usually gather at Sabina Shoal. So it's a little bit of a strategic location. It's closer to the Philippine coastline than even Second Thomas Shoal is. And so the Philippines is a little more sensitive to seeing Chinese vessels there, or any other country's vessels there, because it's really getting very close to home.
Okay, I have a quick follow-up on that. The boat on Second Thomas Shoal that we've actually seen some imagery of as well. So are they doing something similar to what these militia boats are doing? They're trying to hold that territory right now, and that's why they continue to do these resupplies?
Yeah, so they are very interested in Second Thomas Shoal. We hesitate to call it territory because it is not above water at all times, so it doesn't actually it's not classified as territory. And the reason that's important is that oftentimes China will refer to some of these places as a, quote, territorial dispute, when technically it's not territory under the law. But yes, at Second Thomas Shoal, because the Philippines has run this vessel aground, it has an outpost there. But China, meanwhile, has built a very, very large military base on the other side of that called Mischief Reef. And this has a port, it has an airfield, it's got anti-ship missiles, it is a serious military base. So they have been using Mischief Reef to stage a blockade, with the ships that are sort of ported there. It's very easy for them to go out and blockade the entryway to Second Thomas Shoal, to make the Philippines resupply missions as difficult as possible, and to only let through the Philippine ships or boats that they think should go through. And that's actually a very small number. China does not want that ship, that grounded ship, the Sierra Madre, to be repaired or replaced. They're hoping it will just sort of get washed away in a large storm because it is now so old and rusty.
Got it. Yeah, and I know that boat is a point of interest for a lot of reporters right now. Great. My last question here is really just about the general public and people that don't understand the world of what's going on in the South China Sea. How does this affect the overall geopolitical conflicts in the world and just the average citizens in the US, Europe, or anywhere in the world?
Well, the thing to remember about the South China Sea, of course, is of great interest across the board because the huge amount of shipping that goes through there. And we're one country to control the whole thing and decide to make that shipping more difficult. It would certainly be able to do so. And China has the capacity to do so over time. We've seen how much having the Houthi rebels launching missiles at ships in the Red Sea has disrupted global shipping. Imagine that, expanded by a factor of 10 when you're talking about a state actor, if they wanted to make that difficult for international shipping. But just on a more routine basis, of course, we've got all of the very sensitive biodiversity and ecology involved in the reef structure in the South China Sea. All of the fish and other wildlife that exists there in this very fragile ecosystem is really suffering under a lot of the overfishing and destructive fishing practices and other things that we see happening there. And finally, the Philippines is a United States treaty ally. So were there to be more serious confrontations between the Philippines and China, it could implicate that treaty. It could draw the U.S. in, and we could be looking at a much more serious great power confrontation than occurs today. And that's why a lot of people who are sort of in the military space worry about it, because of course nobody wants to see the U.S. and China get to blows.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Well, great. Well, thank you for your time today. You are the expert on this, and we really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch as this continues to develop and we take a look at it through satellite imagery.
Great to talk to you, Tom.